whatever life holds in store for me, I will never forget these words. With great power comes great responsibility. This is my gift, my curse. Who am I? I'm Spider-Man.
Welcome, everybody, to the Monthly Movie Dispatch. We get together every month and talk about what movies we've seen, what we recommend, and what to avoid. What separates us from the other 100,000 movie-related shows is that we're high school friends, and we have been discussing movies for 15 years. We love talking film, and we'd be doing it even if no one was listening. So I'm Nick Moffat. I'm here hailing from Seattle, Washington. We also got Sean Bowlby.
Hello.
He's in Seattle. We got Derek Deal.
Hello.
He's come from Everett, and Brandon Bowlby in New York City.
Hey, guys.
So we're hitting this is our December episode, and December's the big time where we're starting to get into the award season, and people are starting to put out their top 10 movies of the year lists. I know AV Club put out theirs, and Sight and Sound put out theirs, and so I think all of us are kind of scrambling, trying to catch up on what we might have missed in order to solidify our end of the year lists. I know I'm trying to hit 100 movies for the year. That's my personal goal. I'm at 80 right now. Do you guys have any?
You'll get that.
Yeah, no, I think I'll get it, no problem. But that's just my goal. So, Brandon, what are you trying to do?
I'm at 96 right now, and I think my last few years have been around 120, which I'm not necessarily aiming for, and I think I have a much easier list remaining than I have the last couple years of what to watch January and February. So it should be pretty easy to get there.
You shared that list with me on Letterboxd last night.
I'm shocked about how many of them are just already on Netflix or already on iTunes. Like, I can just stream them any night. It's going to be really easy.
Totally. Derek, Sean, do you guys have any plans or goals for the end of the year movies?
I don't have any goals or anything, but I am excited that this is my biggest year so far. I'm one away from 50. That's really big for me. I think last year I had 34 movies, and that was my biggest year last year. So,
yeah, I'm a little bit behind right now because I was sick for what felt like 10 days straight, and then I was working for like a week straight. And then got right into the holiday season, so I'm a little bit behind on a bunch of movies that I want to see. But I have a nice long list that I need to catch up on, and movies from even earlier in the year that I need to catch up on. But I'm doing pretty well. I feel less behind this year than some other years.
Well, yeah, it's always crazy this time of year when just a lot of awards movies don't come out until the end of December or even January, and I feel like not as many big awards movies are coming out this time of year, but it still is kind of a scramble to catch up on all the things you might have missed over the year. So, yeah, I'm really excited. We got a lot of great movies to talk about, and I'm eager to get going and get your thoughts on them. So first, we're going to start off with the best of the year update, just kind of catching up on some of the movies we've already talked about, but some of us may have missed. So, Brandon, I know you had a movie you wanted to bring up again.
Yeah, I believe Derek talked about this on a previous episode, but I wanted to give this movie a shout out because it was just so fun. It's this genre film called Overlord, which I think it's almost better if you don't watch a trailer for it and you go in blind, though the advertising campaign, made sure you kind of knew what it was going to be about. But this movie starts out as a dead serious World War II movie with just an insane opening, 20 minutes, and then morphs into something else entirely, and something a little more stylized and a little more fun by the end. And it culminates in one of the most insane, final climax shots I've seen in a long time. And it's so casual, nonchalant when they whip this camera movement out. And with this kind of medium budget indie, it's insane what they pulled off with some of the effects in this film.
Yeah, so that's Overlord, and that's still in theaters now, yeah?
Barely.
Trickling out.
barely.
Okay. So Overlord, either way, keep your eyes open for Overlord. I'm pretty excited to see it. It's pretty cool hearing that you guys both loved it so much. I wanted to bring up a movie that is on Hulu. It's a Hulu original movie, Minding the Gap. I know Brandon talked about this a few months ago, but it's a documentary about these three skateboarding kids who it's basically just about their lives, and it's not even really about skateboarding. Like, skateboarding kind of sets the table, but then it's really about them kind of trying to grow up, but being stuck with their pasts, and kind of how the abuse that they went through sticks around, and them trying to transition into adulthood and how hard it can be. It was a really great documentary. It had a lot of heart, and it was just very raw but very real. I would recommend this movie to just about anybody. It's a really great documentary. Minding the Gap. You guys, Sean, Derek, you guys should watch it.
So good. End of the year, one of the best docs for sure.
There have been a lot of great documentaries this year too, by the way, guys.
Yeah.
This year is insane with documentaries.
You guys haven't seen Won't You Be My Neighbor, really, have you?
No.
I've not.
that's-
No.
All right. I'm kind of thinking that's just going to like sweep the like Golden Globes and Oscars. I don't necessarily, I mean, it's great, but there's so much competition. I don't know if it should.
Yeah, that's going to be my next documentary that I watch. I watched the Ruth Bader Ginsburg one, and that was okay. But yeah, there are a few other ones that have come out this year that have just been like shockingly good. And I know there's another one that we're going to talk about later on. So we'll get to that one when we come up. So now we're going to go into our short reviews. These are movies that are either blockbusters or indies that maybe one or two of us have seen. And but they're worth talking about. Like, all of these are pretty interesting. I'm actually really excited to hear Derek's thoughts on this first one. Derek?
Yeah, first one is Aquaman, James Wan's Aquaman. This movie's been a long time coming, and it's kind of like, I was kind of seeing it as like a big test for DC to see if they kind of have an idea of how to make these movies work. I mean, Wonder Woman was great, but it's like, that felt like a one-off when all their other movies were not working at all. I was happy with Aquaman. It was really fun. It was very colorful. It had some great action. It's hard not to compare it to James Wan's Fast and Furious movies. It literally, like, it really feels like it has that same tone and the same kind of humor, you know, where it's kind of cheesy and over the top. But I've always kind of thought that's what Aquaman is, though. It's a really hard premise to take as seriously as Batman or something, you know. And I think that they understand that it's, especially for a massive audience to totally buy into that, they decided to kind of build into the cheesiness of everything and just embrace it and just let it be what it is. And I think it worked out really well. They stuck to a lot of the source material, as silly as some of it is. And they got a lot of characters in there that were all, I thought, adapted really well. And yeah, it was really fun. He does some really creative stuff with the camera. The CGI in this movie is so good. It just because of what the movie is, I feel like most of it's CGI, but you can't really tell because it just looks so good. I'm assuming, like, you know, them blasting around, flying through the water at, 100 miles an hour, but none of that's all CGI. That's a lot of the movie, so I don't know. It's kind of hard to tell, but some of the land fights and stuff, they just do some really cool long take action through cities and stuff, and it's cool. I liked it a lot, and it was a nice break from both the other DC movies and then also Marvel, like, because it was nice not having to have the weight of the MCU or something equivalent to that on this movie's back. It felt like its own standalone thing. It wasn't really trying to build into any larger mythology, and I thought that worked really well.
Well, cool. So you're making it sound like it's like a colorful Fast and Furious movie underwater.
Yeah, it pretty much is, with some like Indiana Jones mixed in.
I like how the Warner Brothers CEO mandated Justice League be under 2 hours long. Like, made this huge deal about how he's going to shorten all the DC movies, and then just like instantly dropped that. Like, he kept that rule around only for the most important movie in their franchise.
Right.
That should be longer than all the rest.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, it is curious what the DCEU is trying to do. I still don't, even though you're saying all these great things about it, like, it makes me want to see Aquaman, but I still think there's a lot of question marks with what they're trying to do with their, connected universe thing. Just, I keep hearing rumors about actors and dropping out of the franchise, and then the Joker movie is not going to be. It's going to be standalone, not relating to the other ones. It just, I'm curious if they even care about it being like connected or whatever, which could be a benefit for them.
It's kind of weird because they they jumped into their universe so fast, almost trying to play catch up with Marvel, and like really getting into the meat of kind of the connected universe. But now I don't know if they're kind of realizing that didn't work so well without laying the groundwork for the movies, and now they're trying to go back and kind of start over or what. But they seem to be making some strange decisions that might actually work and make the kind of universe a little more interesting than kind of where they were originally going. But yeah, I'm not sure.
It's like they've switched with Marvel too. Mm-hmm. Like,
yeah.
Marvel started out doing their solo movies that were very light and very just blockbustery, and then they eventually connected all of them, and now Marvel's at that point where they're very serious and dark, and like that new Avengers trailer was bleak, and now DC started out bleak, started out very dark, and now they're the ones that are doing just solo movies that are light and blockbustery.
Yeah.
But I think it's a benefit for both of them. I think both of them are probably in a good place. So anyway, let's move on to the next movie. Brandon, do you have another blockbuster you want to talk about?
Yeah, so big movie that came out this month is Mary Poppins Returns. I believe I was the only one who saw it here. I just went on a whim. I didn't really plan on seeing it, but I had nothing to do when I was in Seattle visiting family, and just walked to the theater down the street. So this movie, I think the best thing I can say about it is it was not a train wreck, and it was not terrible, and it so easily could have been. Even when you're sitting there watching the movie, just like for what the movie is, I think the first one is a miracle, and this just like teeters on the line of possibly being awful, but they hold it together with several like really good sentimental moments. And
so real quick,
Wait, is it good?
Have you guys seen the original Mary Poppins?
Yes.
Long time ago.
Okay, because I haven't, and I keep hearing about how, like, if that movie came out today, or whatever, like, it's a really strange, crazy concept that barely works, and it almost sounds like that's what you're saying about this one too.
Exactly. Like the story is like ridiculous, and the reason why the first one worked is because like the music is so good, and
I feel like the
performances
technology,
are so unique.
Like the technology was so new and interesting at the time.
And this one, the technology isn't new and interesting, and the music isn't that special, but they just barely hold together. And they go on some like crazy tangents that when you're watching it, you're like, oh, this is cool. I get the direction this movie's going. It's fun. And by the end of the movie, you're like, what the fuck did like we just spend 45 minutes on? Like, this is like screenwriters 101 mistake level like detour that they take. And it's a pretty big crime to commit, and they do it a couple times in this movie. But overall, I don't think it's awful. I think it's like a worthy-ish sequel. So if you're a fan of musicals, go see it.
So like,
so many backhanded compliments in that.
It's not a train wreck, so it's good then. But so Emily Blunt, she's good. Mary Poppins.
Yeah, and the kids are pretty great as well.
And the music's good.
The music's all right. It's easily forgettable, but they they have like a few set pieces with the music that make some of the songs very worthwhile. And
So you're not like going home and listening to the music and
yeah, no, not at all.
Years from now, we probably won't have any new songs that are on rotation, that sort of thing.
Right. And the guy like Lin-Manuel Miranda, whatever the Hamilton guy's name, he gets like this one. I hear they helped like write a handful of the songs in here, but he gets this one part where he just like goes off on this like hip hop thing, and it's pretty like amazing. And it's so clear that like this one guy is just a genius at like putting lyrics together.
Okay.
So it's a lot of little interesting things.
Does it have a chance to win Best Musical Comedy?
No, not at all.
No.
What else is nominated for that?
Vice, Green Book, Crazy Rich Asians, and The Favorite.
Well, we're gonna be talking about The Favorite in a little bit, but yeah, okay, well, cool. So Mary Poppins Returns, that's still in theaters now. Brandon,
do
was
or don't
okay
see
on
it.
Yeah, do or don't see it. That's put down the poster. So, Sean, do you have another blockbuster you wanted to talk about?
Yeah, I watched Bumblebee. I'm the only one who watched Bumblebee.
Bumblebee?
Yeah, Bumblebee, the new Transformers movie. It's out. It dropped right before Christmas, so no one else got a chance to see it yet, but I believe at least 2 or all of you are going to go see it soon, so I'm not going to dive too deep into it. I'm just going to pretty much say it's not your normal Transformers movie. It is far and away the best Transformers movie that has been made, and it's more along the lines of like The Iron Giant or E.T., not necessarily in quality, but in terms of what they were going for with the movie. It's a much more serious movie and less of just dumb, pointless action like the other Transformers movies. It's directed by Travis Knight, who did Kubo and the Two Strings, which, as I actually just found out, he's only directed 2 movies. These are the only 2 movies in his directorial credits. And I absolutely loved Kubo and the Two Strings. So it's really interesting, and he's a really promising director. I highly recommend it. Don't judge it on it being a Transformers movie. It actually has a few very touching scenes. Like you get choked up several times in this movie, and the action scenes are well put together and are coherent, and the plot makes sense, and the characters arc, and it's like
all
a
those
real
things
movie.
A normal movie should have.
Yeah, it's
Like, these are all things you have to bring up when talking about the Transformers franchise.
And so, I mean, I'm going to be totally honest, Sean. I know you just got done saying that it's a competent movie and don't judge it because it's a Transformers movie, but, I'm torn. It's a Transformers movie, and I just don't know if I have the time to sit through another Transformers movie.
I mean, I would definitely say that it works for sure outside of being a Transformers movie. It's a good movie. I gave it 4 stars.
It being a prequel kind of makes it a little more interesting. Like you saying that it's a worthwhile prequel, that puts it in a list, a very short list of prequels that actually add more to the franchise.
Yeah.
It's a very short list.
Is it the only movie on the list that is a better prequel than its original? I mean, maybe I think people would probably argue Godfather Part 2 being a prequel to Godfather, half prequel, half sequel, but
Annabelle Creation.
Derek.
Well, I'm definitely going to see this movie. It looks like it's having a rough time at the box office too.
Oh no!
And I've heard a lot of people praise like the really CGI heavy like action scenes on like Cybertron and stuff like that.
Yeah,
as like finally like like getting the look and feel of what the Transformers movie should feel like.
Yeah, for sure.
Like correct for the first time.
Yeah,
and it definitely just sounds awesome and great. There's no downside to it from what I can see. Michael Bay's far and far away from this movie, so I'm totally in.
Okay, so that's Bumblebee. Sean is giving it massive praise, so see it in theaters. Brandon, we're switching gears a little bit. We're going to talk about some indies. You have a couple indies that you want to talk about.
Yeah. So, film I saw is called Beautiful Boy, which is a really bad title, but I wish they'd chosen something different. But this is a movie that stars Timothy Chalamet and Steve Carell, and also Amy Ryan, who is from The Office as well with Steve Carell. So that's kind of a weird throwback from seasons 5 through 7. She is Holly. Yeah, she's Holly. So it's kind of interesting that they're married in this movie too. Okay, so this movie got like mixed reviews, and I was really looking forward to it before, but then like the trailers were so sappy and the mixed reviews came out. But I did finally go see it, and honestly, it's not as like controversial or mixed as I thought it should be or would be, and the performances really stand out. This guy, like Timothy Chalamet, is so amazing, and like this is going to be incredible just seeing what he does go forward because he's such a young, like promising actor. The melodrama in this movie definitely worked for me, and I think that's where a lot of people got turned off by. But for me, like it really had a purpose, and the script gave the characters, reasons to be like bawling their eyes out in every other scene. And they were going through like tough, hard shit. And it kind of took a unique, like upper class perspective on heroin addiction that was fascinating to watch. And talking to a kid that should be so reasonable about it and try to figure out why he can't just give this substance up. One weird thing I've also seen other people like point out, and as soon as it starts, it's super strange, is the soundtrack for this film and how loud it is, especially in the first half of the movie. Like I can't think of too many movies who just fail so hard on distracting songs to pick to put over your drama. So that's one strange choice they made for this film. But overall, I think it's a really unique perspective, and should go see it.
Yeah, I've been looking for this one. I missed it when it did its theater run out here in Washington, but yeah, I'm looking forward to when it comes out on streaming sources and stuff. So, Brandon, what's your next movie?
Next movie is Wildlife. This is Paul Dano's directorial debut. Has Jake Gyllenhaal and Carey Mulligan in it, but also this movie. Mostly, even though they're top billed, it's a movie about their kid. But the kid is really great in this film, and he's definitely the standout. I'd say I was maybe slightly disappointed going in. I was hoping this would be one of my like favorite movies of the year, with like seeing the trailer and hearing the hype about it from the festivals. I think this is kind of too quiet of a movie for me really to feel much, especially in the like climax when they're trying to make things hit. And I think also the budget kind of got in the way of this film. It was pretty contained, and they had a story where they could have gone further with I don't know if you guys seen the trailers, but the like firefighting, forest fire aspect of this film. And I think they had to probably restrain too much because of the budget. And if they had been able to take the script into those more interesting places, I think it could have had a bigger impact. But yeah, kind of mixed reviews on how much I like enjoyed it, but it's definitely a super competent, well shot film by Paul Dano, and like good for him on finally directing a movie.
Cool. So that movie's Wildlife. Is that on your guys' radar, Sean, Derek?
It definitely was. I not very high up my list of priorities, but have definitely been interested in it for Paul Dano. It's another in a long list of directorial debuts from especially actors for this year. So it's definitely been on my radar.
Okay. Yeah, I definitely want to see it. It's one of those movies I'm kind of just waiting for it to become available. So that movie's Wildlife. Keep an eye open for it. I wanted to bring up a movie we alluded to earlier, it's another documentary that came out. It's actually available on Netflix right now. It's called Shirkers. And this movie first, I think we first heard of this movie because Sight and Sound put it on their end of the year list, which that's supposed to be one of the most prestigious end of the year lists in the world. So having this documentary on there that's already available on Netflix.
Doing air quotes while saying that?
No, actually I wasn't,
Okay.
but because it is supposed to be one of the most prestigious. And I know off air I was kind of bitching about it a little bit, but you know, they put good movies on there. But
Okay.
Shirkers, though, it's a documentary about this teenager, this group of friends in the early 90s in Singapore, and they just love film, and they're kind of their own, you know, group of friends, and they funded and created a film, and they had this American guy as their he was like their teacher and their mentor, and he directed the movie, and they kind of all bound together, and they all had different jobs, and they worked really hard on it. And I mean, it was like this really creative movie in Singapore, and then the director, this American guy.
I think it's worth saying real quick, in a time and place when Singapore was kind of on like government lockdown-ish culturally. Like the Cultural Revolution hadn't really hit Singapore yet, and people were very more like, I guess, uptight, and these students were kind of trying to like break free of that.
Right.
And that's very much present, especially in the first half of this documentary.
They totally, like, they alluded to there not being any movies that came out of Singapore, like, ever. There was like one or two other movies that took place in Singapore, and so they were kind of like, we're making this movie, and it's like, it was like a rebellious effort making the movie, and it was like this punk rock thing, and it was they were like, they had these like dreams of it being like the movie that comes out of Singapore and shows that, you know, we're creative here, and it's going to be like a force, you know, and then the director, he just vanished. Like after they got done shooting, he just like disappeared with the movie. And like, I wish that movie had actually come out and gone made, because it would have been fantastic. It looked weird and awesome. I don't know. It was a really great documentary. I know, Brandon, you saw this movie too.
Yeah, I think it looks like I like this a little bit better than you. I was leaning between like 4 and 4.5 stars, but I feel like the first half of this documentary is like top documentary brilliant. Like, I was so on board. The way she's like telling her story and editing all this like scrap footage and like old like found stuff from Singapore and from her film like together, it was incredibly unique and well done. And I think at some point, even though the movie's short, like I kind of stopped caring about this like asshole and what he did, and I kind of just wanted to hear more about like the culture and what this movie like was supposed to be. And so for me, like my interest, I think it kind of went in the wrong direction, or they focused too much on this one guy.
I felt like they kind of were, they played their hand pretty early about what.
Yeah.
There could have been more like dramatic tension, I felt like, with the unfolding of the story. But what really got me was the footage that they eventually found, you know, of the movie, and like it just the inspiration that they had, and it looked so great. Like so.
Yeah. It's like that documentary, Stories We Tell, when you have something you like want to say or put together, but you don't really have any direction of how you should show it visually. And what this movie kind of comes up with, for especially the first half of the movie, is just so creative on what you're actually like seeing visually to go along with the story she's telling.
So yeah, so that movie is Shriekers. I really recommend it for all you guys. It's available on Netflix right now.
I didn't realize it was on Netflix. I'm definitely going to watch that.
I think it's Shirkers.
Shirkers, yeah.
Was I calling it Shriekers?
Shriekers.
It's not. They're not shrieking. It's anyway. So let's move on. We've got Sean and Brandon. You guys both saw a movie. I think you saw it together while you were out here.
Yeah, we saw the movie Green Book, which is directed by Peter Farrelly. starring
Same
Viggo.
guy who did the same guy who did Dumb and Dumber, and there's something about Mary.
What?
Yeah, something about Mary, Dumb and
One of the
Dumber,
Farley brothers.
and Green Book, as well as a bunch of other comedies as well.
Man, I was wondering what happened to those guys.
They he just, I don't know if his brother did this one.
Makes so much sense.
Haven't seen yet, but it's starring Viggo Mortensen and Mahershala Ali. Mahershala Ali plays a pianist a famous pianist who is traveling around the South in, I believe, the 60s. Yeah, the 1960s, and he hires Viggo Mortensen to be his driver slash kind of bodyguard slash maybe kind of fixer guy, just to get him to all of his shows, and maybe keep him out of trouble in the South as well. And it's a comedy. It's actually nominated for Best Comedy.
Well, yeah, the guys who directed Dumb and Dumber, obviously.
Yeah,
right?
I know.
It's honestly the best part of the movie. The comedy is so smart and so well acted.
Yeah.
And it's subtle too. Like, you could easily walk out of this thinking it was a dramedy, but then realize you were laughing for most of the movie.
Yeah, it's really funny. It's really clever. Viggo Mortensen is surprisingly funny and good. And I mean, everyone knows he's a really good actor, but you know, it's definitely, I've never seen him in a comedic role before, and his just timing and his understanding of comedy, or what seems like his understanding of comedy, maybe it comes more from Peter Farley, but yeah, I mean, it's a legitimately funny movie. It's one of the hardest I've laughed at a movie all year.
Okay, wait a second though. So, I mean, I was joking before, obviously, by saying Dumb and Dumber, something about Mary, but like, you guys are really hammering in the comedy. Is it like?
Yeah,
I mean,
You
it must
leave
have
the movie
drama
thinking
too, though,
it's a
right?
drama. Like, it is a drama, but then you realize you're laughing like every other scene.
And definitely the best part of the movie is the comedy.
But
and,
you
like,
shouldn't
these
go
two
into the movie
characters-
expecting dick and fart jokes. Like, it's a drama, right? Like, it's
Right.
No, it's definitely not. Well, no, it's not dick and fart jokes for sure.
It's
a
very
little
innocent. It's like it makes sense to the Farley brothers. This movie like feels very kind of like 90s old, like, family
Sentimental.
film, I guess. Like, everything kind of is wrapped up in a nice little bow, and it's pretty simple the way it like treats its characters and its arcs. And that was kind of the thing that for me was the most mixed about it. While on the other hand, the comedy was pretty excellent.
Mm-hmm.
Well, cool. I've heard mixed things about this movie from other than you guys, but it sounds like you both liked it a lot.
It's just really entertaining and wholesome. It's a good family movie. You can definitely bring your mom to, and the whole family will have a great time. Yeah, definitely your mom.
It's a mom movie.
Such a mom movie.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let's move on. So that was Green Book. That's still in theaters now. It got nominated for a bunch of awards, so keep an eye open for Green Book. Brandon, Sean, you guys have another movie you wanted to talk about. Brandon, taking the lead on this one?
Yeah. So, saw the new Peter Jackson World War I documentary, They Shall Not Grow Old. This movie is only showing a 2-day special and only showing at like 2 show times per theater. It's like a very strange release. I don't know why.
Yeah.
I'm guessing because it's some like BBC production and they've already released it like on TV in England. So it wasn't supposed to be some big thing. But apparently it did crazy good just the 2 days. Like, it made millions of dollars for like 4 show times.
I tried to see it a few days ago, or a couple days ago, with a friend, and we tried to get tickets maybe 5 days in advance, and it was like everything was sold out.
Yeah. I saw it on the 19th. I had to go all the way out to Queens just to find a theater that wasn't sold out, which I've never had to do before. Anyways, but about the actual movie, I mean, it sounds a little bit similar to Green Book. I think this movie was pretty simple. It's a pretty surface level take of World War One. It starts at the very beginning, pre-draft, and ends, ends when the soldiers are coming home. And it's an hour and a half long, and it's just like a montage of step by step what happened to the common soldier through that entire process. It doesn't really show you like an all-encompassing like world war. It just kind of shows you a typical like journey that a soldier would go through.
Specifically, a British soldier.
Yeah, a British
on
soldier
the Western
would go
Front.
So you don't really like learn all that much besides the fact that you're seeing this brand new, incredible footage like in front of your eyes that you've never seen before. Yeah, which is why I kind of have mixed feelings about it. Like, it's an amazing experience to see this like on screen, but I was also kind of hoping for a like more. I guess I was hoping for more information, or also maybe even more like style or more interesting storytelling.
Yeah.
But I still think everybody should see this. Like, they should show it in classrooms all over the world. Like, this is such a special look at this, 1914 footage.
Yeah, I feel like this movie, it was just going for something very, very specific. And, I'm sure there's hundreds of documentaries that you can see about the First World War that explains, how the war started and how the war developed and unfolded and why certain countries went to war with each other and what was going on around the world at the time and how the war affected all these different countries around the world. And you can get into so many different aspects of the war with a lot of other documentaries, but I feel like this movie, he was just going for something very specific. His goal was to try as much as possible to eliminate the barrier between the soldiers in this footage and us today. Like you can watch all this old footage and it all feels very distant, and like it's kind of hard to connect with these people who lived, over 100 years ago now. And the whole, I think the goal of it was just to get you to see these soldiers as people who lived, complex lives in a very different time than we live today, but they're still kids who are going off to war. And what were their daily experiences of the war? How did they live their lives? What was it? What were the trenches like? And what, was it? It wasn't all absolute misery throughout the entirety of the war for these soldiers. They had fun sometimes. They got to laugh sometimes, but also sometimes they were dealing with new aspects of war that no one had ever dealt with at the time. So I thought for what it was doing, it did a pretty incredible job at, and it really didn't, I don't think, there's nothing really that no decisions that Peter Jackson made that, he wasn't really doing anything in a super interesting artistic way. He kind of just let the footage speak for itself. And he only used the audio recordings of living soldiers. I think they were recorded in like the 50s or 60s, a bunch of, he said 600 hours of interviews with British soldiers. And he just let these soldiers tell their own story, using the footage and kind of magazine photos and illustrations from the time. And it felt very authentic and honest, and it was only an hour and a half, so it was a very palatable movie length.
Mm-hmm. I just looked up the movie. It looks like Warner Brothers is going to do a theatrical release of the movie in February.
Okay, so that was They Shall Not Grow Old, and sounds like it'll be getting a full theatrical run in February, so keep an eye open for it. So me and Brandon saw another movie that we want to talk about. It's called The Favorite. This is Yorgos Lanthimos' new movie. He previously did Dogtooth and The Lobster and The Killing of a Sacred Deer. I thought this was very different from those movies, which were both very existential, but comedies. Like, they were funny, but also very, very dark. I thought this movie was really great. I was a big fan of The Lobster and not so much of The Killing of a Sacred Deer, but I would say both of those movies were kind of hard to recommend. Like, you had to recommend them to a certain type of person. I feel like almost anyone could watch The Favorite. It was his most accessible movie by far. It was very fun in a lot of parts. The pacing was really great. There were a lot of really funny moments, but then there were also a lot of really interesting character twists and intertwining like motivations. There's a lot, like, I kind of wish we were doing a feature review on this because there's a lot we could talk about. There's a lot of like intersecting.
There's a lot going on.
What was that?
There's a lot going on, especially in spoiler territory.
Yeah. So I don't really want to say too much, but it's like there really are a lot of really complicated relationships in this movie. But the movie isn't even that complicated, though. It's like it's easy to follow, and you know where each one's coming from. But then the end, you're kind of like, oh, it's kind of like surprising where it goes. And there is definitely a discussion to be had about, I guess, who wins and why the characters do what they do, and that sort of thing. Brandon, what did you think?
I think Olivia Colman needs to win everything this year. Like, this is one of the movies where just the acting alone is so incredible and impressive. Like, that alone would capture you for the whole film. But then on top of it, you have like Yorgos Lanthimos' amazing directing, the humor. I think this is absolutely one of the best, like the best comedy of the year.
Yeah, like coming from The Lobster and The Killing of a Sacred Deer, both those movies were so hard on their characters. Like, both of those movies were relentlessly painful and like just tough. And yeah, The Favorite may not have gone as far as that, but like I said, it's his most accessible movie, and I think like to reach a broader audience, maybe it didn't need to put the characters through much more. I was pretty captivated by the ending, and it's also one of those movies that it stuck with me a lot. Like, I keep thinking about it, and I think I gave it 4 stars on Letterboxd, but I easily could have given it 4.5. I might bump it up. I just keep thinking about it.
I also loved the style in this movie with like its time period, but also how it didn't necessarily care all that much about representing the time period.
Yeah, I think that might have been what I liked about it. You know how I am with period pieces. Like,
yeah,
it was in
the 18th century, but it was super playful with what was allowed to be in the 18th century.
Yeah, I mean, there was that weird scene where they took out their cell phones and started texting people, but
what?
I'm just kidding. But
you confused me for a second.
I'm sorry. But
I missed that scene.
No,
right, I'm talking about like, the dancing scene specifically.
Yeah, totally. That scene was pretty bizarre, but yeah, it didn't necessarily have a timestamp on it. It was just like a vague period piece. Yeah, I would recommend this movie for you guys. I mean, I'm rooting for it this award season.
Yeah, this will be in my top 10 for sure.
Those 3 actresses all got nominated.
If we were doing this podcast tomorrow, I definitely would have seen it today. I just kind of ran out of time.
So that's The Favorite. It's still in theaters now. Me and Brandon both highly recommend it. So we're going to move into our feature reviews now, where we're going to go in depth on a couple movies. We only picked 2 for our features. So the first one is Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. Real quick, I'm going to read the plot summary of it. Teen Miles Morales becomes Spider-Man of his reality, crossing his path with 5 counterparts from other dimensions to stop a threat for all realities. So this movie is animated. It's this. I don't know about you guys, but to me it almost felt like a random, like, oh, there's a Spider-Man anime movie coming out. That's interesting, and oh, it's gonna be in theaters. Oh, I mean, just how good is this movie gonna be? Like, is this like a cash grab? Is this like, Teen Titans Go to the Movies? Is it like straight for kids? Like, I didn't really know too much about this movie, and then the buzz started picking up on it, and people were saying a lot of big things about it, and I don't know, I got really, really excited, and I mean, it turned out to be something incredibly, incredibly special, and wonderful. So I mean, that's my first question for you guys. Like, what makes this movie special? Derek, do you want to start us off?
Sure. I think what really makes this movie special is just like the time and care that is put into every single aspect of the movie. I think in my review on Letterboxd, I compared it to Mad Max Fury Road because I feel like just every single part of this movie is top notch. Like, if we just start basic, the animation, I've never seen a movie animated like this. And its visuals are mind-blowingly gorgeous, and it's styled in, I don't even know what, might as well make up a new name for this, like, style, because I've never seen this done before.
I'm so confused. Who approved this? Like, what executive allowed this to happen?
I was just looking. So what I was almost assuming for a while now is that it was just, I think these studios and these companies make a lot of animated superhero movies that come out pretty regularly, but none of them are that big or all that good for a wider audience. And so I just kind of assumed that this was another one of those movies that happened to be really good, and they thought, hey, let's just release it and see if it does really well. But I'm looking at this, it had a budget of $90 million. That's a big investment that needs to be approved, and that's a big chance that Sony took on this movie.
So I think I know a little bit about this, actually. Phil Lord and Christopher Miller have like a 3 or 4 movie deal with Sony for animated movies, like a 3-movie animated deal, and this is the first one. And so they have 2 more movies they have to make, like 2 more animated family films they have to make for Sony. And so this was the first of them. And I think those guys are just they've made a really big name for themselves in animated films, especially with Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs and the Lego Movie. And so now this is their movie that they kind of shepherded into Sony through some other directors and stuff.
And they've shown that with like the Lego Batman movie, like these niche superhero movies can be successful.
Yeah.
These animated ones to a wider audience.
I felt so bad for Solo while watching this film.
I know, right?
I was
Me
just
too.
like, oh my God, Solo could have been so successful and so lucrative for this company if they had let it happen.
These guys, I feel like
guys are
every
geniuses.
time something goes through them, and they didn't even direct it. They wrote it. They didn't direct it, but whatever it is that they do, they tend to be like some of the best people at it. And I feel like, whatever it's their creative energy or whatever going into this, like, I don't know, this movie's just something else. It's so good. And the like Miles Morales as a character is done so well in this movie. And I don't know, like, hopefully Sony wasn't planning on bringing him into like their live action Spider-Man films, because I don't know what they're going to do to try to like top this or live up to this like franchise that they're kind of most likely starting with this movie, I'm guessing. But
Yeah, I say keep going. Keep doing animated movies.
yeah.
Let's go back real quick to the animation. So, like, I don't know about you guys, but this was like some of the best animation I've like ever seen.
Ever.
Like it kind of feels like Toy Story. Like when Toy Story came out in, what was that, like 95, and there had never been an animation style like that before. And it feels like with this movie, it feels like a brand new style. It's like a mixture of all sorts of different things, like 2D on top of 3D, and
on top of comic book
just,
ink cells.
Yeah.
it's just fantastic. It's I'm curious if other people are gonna pick up on that and go on to a new thing.
I mean, it's definitely like the most obvious is that it uses a lot of word bubbles and sound. I don't know what you call them, but like sound effect. Like when Miles Morales first does the the web shooting, for maybe a frame or two, you see the word thwip at his wrists, you know.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of, or like he'll just fly across the screen and you'll hear him scream, you know, whoa, and then like the word whoa will follow him across the screen, and like so it's the style is very obvious and right up front as far as that comic book style.
I feel like there's also a maturity to those word bubbles that you wouldn't expect. It sounds cheesy, or it sounds like an obligation to show comic stuff on screen, but the way the movie did it was like so maturely done or tastefully done. I was pretty blown away.
Well, it's not being ironic, which I feel like in a lot of cartoon, when they do that, they're being ironic. They're like, oh, look, it's a sound bubble in a movie.
It's not ironic, but it's ironic. I wouldn't call it mature though. I mean, there's a point where the bagel, he like throws a bagel at someone and it says bagel when it hits someone in the face. Like it's very silly. Like it's very silly, but it's authentic to what they're trying to do, right? So another thing like about this movie for me at least is I felt like it's Miles Morales' intro, it's his origin story, but it also didn't fully feel like an origin story. You know, I'm a fan of comic book movies, and I'm also not that interested in the origin. It's like, okay, we've seen where these characters come from, or, you know, that something happens to them and they become, you know, a superhero. But like this movie, you know, it shows how he becomes the hero. It shows him, become better his abilities and accept his fate. But it also like has a greater plot, and it's more focused on the other things that are happening and the other characters, and not just his origin. And
yeah, the story's not necessarily even about his origin,
right?
Like it's almost like that's just kind of happening while this other shit's going on, and we just see it from his perspective. So,
well, they also did a clever intro for all the other Spider-Man too. It wasn't necessarily an origin for the other ones, but they did like a fair intro for each of them, and that was pretty cool. It was
a very clever way to introduce all of them, so that we know who they are and where they came from, and you know why they're there.
Yeah. I can't recommend this movie enough, honestly. Like I gave it 4.5 stars, but I really could bump it up to 5. I want to see it again.
I have nothing bad to say about the movie. It was pretty much perfect. I loved how it just put its faith in the audience. It didn't need to over explain anything. It didn't need to tell you who Kingpin is, even though I don't think has Kingpin even been in any other Spider-Man movies. I guess he was in Daredevil, but
yeah,
like he hasn't been in any other movies that I'm aware of. And
well, they have like the Green Goblin as like a giant lizard for some reason.
Yeah.
But you know,
I didn't need to explain any of that.
Yeah,
it was just like this is a superhero movie. It's just get on board.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can't say enough great things about the movie, but also like the storytelling in this movie, like it's just so carefully crafted. Like it's surprisingly serious, and it's also really funny the whole time. And I don't even know how they do it, but like, you know, there's all the Spider-Men and women and Pig, and they like imply, God, it's so carefully crafted that like we get these like pretty fleshed out stories from all these characters, and some of them are almost like just implied. Like I don't know if you guys know what I mean, but like it doesn't. There's a big moment in the movie. I'm not gonna spoil anything, but where like you kind of all these stories kind of you grasp like the depth of every character. It's just like you have to be so freaking smart and like good at your job to be able to do that without having to show it or tell it. I don't even know how they did some of the things they did in this movie. It's just so creative and so brilliant at times.
I really liked the the look of the main set piece. So what they were showing was like the particle accelerator, like the CERN, scientific experiment that they have in France, and they like use that as a backdrop, even though it was like under New York City.
Right.
I thought that was such a cool set piece, and when it actually like goes into full on climax mode. The movie got turned into such like an abstract painting of visual imagery. Like my jaw was on the floor.
It was like a Picasso of a comic book.
But it was like a street. It was like a street art version of like a Picasso painting.
Yeah.
So I sent you guys, I don't know if you've seen images of it. I just sent you guys a text of like the particle collisions, and they were totally just like taking this as a basis and just going crazy with it.
Right.
And that's such a great like reference to actual science being used in a very unscientific way.
For sure.
Yeah.
So this movie, with its success and everything, it's definitely like this was their setup for a Spider-Verse, like a literal Spider-Verse in the Sony world, right?
Are they doing all three?
I don't know.
They haven't really announced another one yet, but they will. Like they're definitely gonna make a sequel. Like they're gonna make more of these. Yeah. So I mean, I want to ask you guys real quick. Like, how does it rank with the other Spider-Man movies, for you guys?
I had a big discussion with someone about whether or not it's the best Spider-Man movie ever made, and I definitely think it has a very good case to be.
So
The only contender is Spider-Man 2, right?
Right.
I recently watched. So when Stan Lee passed away, I watched Spider-Man 2. That was like, I'm gonna,
nice.
Stan Lee died. I'm gonna watch one of his best movies, or the best characters, best movies. So I watched Spider-Man 2, which is super fun, and I think Spider-Man 2 is like the closest to being a comic book like any of these other comic books I've made. Like the action is so silly and bombastic and just like crazy. Some of it doesn't hold up. Some of the dialogue is kind of bad, and like the CGI especially like really dates it. It's like that's 2003 for sure. But overall, like the direction and the story and the characters is like top notch. I also watched Spider-Man Homecoming right before I went and saw Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. Like I watched it like the day before, and I love that movie too. Like Spider-Man's such a fun character, and I felt like Homecoming really hit that. But yeah, I mean, like I don't know, like the way I left Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, like it nailed the action, it nailed the characters, it got everything. Like it seems to me that it could easily be the best Spider-Man movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree. Like I might say that I think I agree with you for Spider-Man 2. While it's very clever and really some great Sam Raimi visuals going on, I think it does kind of suffer and is probably a little bit dated. The Tom Holland Spider-Man Homecoming, I think is plot-wise is probably on par with this, but just like the creativity of this movie, I think puts it above and kind of on another level from any other superhero movie. Really puts it in its own class of superhero film for me.
Yeah.
And another thing is like this movie had such a great cast, and it had like Jake Johnson,
crazy cast.
Yeah, Jake Johnson from New Girl as the B Spider-Man or Peter B. Parker. Haley Steinfeld was in it. Mahershala Ali's, John Mulaney, Nicolas Cage.
Nicolas Cage
Lily
was such a great surprise when
Yeah.
he started speaking. I
So
was like,
good.
what?
That was amazing.
Mm-hmm.
So we all love Spider-Man. Everyone should see it. If you haven't seen it yet, highly recommend it.
4.5 stars all around from the four of us.
The movie we want to talk about is Roma. It's the new Alfonso Cuarón movie. It's a Netflix original, but they're doing a limited theatrical run. I think all of us saw it in theaters, but anyone could go on Netflix right now and see it. Netflix is actually pushing pretty hard for Best Picture for this one. So, I mean, I think it's pretty much going to get nominated for Best Picture, but whether or not it wins or not, it easily could win. They're really pushing for it. Real quick, I'm going to read the plot summary. A story that chronicles a year in the life of a middle-class family's maid in Mexico City in the early 1970s. So this movie's like, it's kind of filmed like a memoir from Alfonso Cuarón, except it's not his story, it's his maid's story. So it's the story of this live-in maid and how she interacts with her family and the people around Mexico City, and what her life is like. And it's very real. I mean, I think it's objectively a great film. And then I think all of us have our own thoughts and feelings on it. Brandon, do you want to start us off with this one?
Yeah. So I feel like Alfonso Cuarón is pretty much one of our favorite directors. We've all been huge fans of his.
I mean,
for
Children
a while.
of Men is one of my all-time movies for sure.
Yeah.
Right.
And Gravity.
And yeah, people go off on Children of
Prisoner
Men.
of Azkaban.
E2 Mom Timmy.
There's this quote that Sight and Sound wrote when they gave this film #1 of the year. I think is pretty funny and interesting. It goes, "Roma is the sort of movie that successful pop filmmakers say they'd like to use their clout to make, but almost never do."
Yeah.
Alfonso Cuarón's like directorial path is to get to this point is so crazy. Kind of just like kept building up. I mean, he started in such a small Y Tu Mama Tambien place, or even
Before that,
the little princess, and built up to this like massive like Hollywood blockbuster but artistic filmmaker.
Very slowly,
And
too.
then, yeah, very slowly, taking his time with each movie, and then he pulls like a complete 180 and delivers this passion project, but still on the scale of like an epic film that he was making before. I think this movie is a masterpiece. Even after the movie ended, and like I saw this a while ago, like a month and a half ago now in New York, and there's just so many. I called it an epic before. There's so many set pieces in this movie, as if it's like Fast and the Furious like action, that I just like pop in my head and I think back to, of these great like moments and sequences that play out. And they really, to me in my head, just like stack up and culminate. And it's kind of mind-boggling that they're all in just this one coherent, relatively quiet film. And to me, this movie is very special, and it's going to be one of my end of the year top.
Yeah, I mean, the technical achievements alone, I feel like that's what you're saying by epic, is that like, I mean, it's not like the biggest story. It's not like Ben-Hur or, you know, Lawrence of Arabia. But the way he films this movie, like there are some of these shots that are just unbelievable. Like, I think there's so many times where I'm just like, I was just completely blown away by how could he have possibly filmed that? That's kind of what you're talking about, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's one of those movies where every single shot is like a piece of art in and of itself.
It's just the feeling of scale, even though it's this intimate drama.
Right. Yeah. Sean, do you want to say any brief thoughts before getting into it?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to just kind of talk about this movie without feeling drawn into like so many different places. Like there's so much you could say about this movie. And like probably for me, the most interesting thing that I haven't even really had a chance to work out kind of what it means and what it means to me is the relationship between the family and this woman, the maid. But it's like she's a part of the family, but she's also their maid, and she's an employee who, you know, is at points in the movie worried about being fired or being let go. But like she's loves these kids so much, and she's so tender and sweet with these kids, very much like a mother.
Yeah.
Should we just go spoilers now? Is that I have a hard time talking about this movie without spoilers a little bit, just because my opinion is wrapped so much in personal experience based on what happens in the movie. So,
Well, how about you, Derek?
Yeah, I'm kind of the same.
So, okay, so we're going to go into spoilers now. I'm just going to say spoilers, everyone, we're doing spoilers for this movie. So, there are some big spoilers, so, turn it off now if you don't want to be spoiled. Just, go turn off this episode, go on to Netflix, watch the movie, come back in 2 hours, and, we can all catch up together.
On your cell phone.
Watch it on your cell phone.
Yeah, don't do that. There's... don't watch on your cell phone, watch on your TV, but watch it, and then we can catch up with the spoilers. So after this point, we're talking spoilers.
I will say thank you guys for setting up us going to see it at Cinerama. I'm so glad I didn't watch it at home.
Yeah.
It's
yeah, for sure. That was so incredible.
That was worth it. That was something else. There were, I know, Derek, we talked about this during, right when we walked out of the theater, but there were parts where the sound was so good that I was mad because I thought people were talking around us. I was like, why are people talking during this movie? Oh, they're speaking Spanish. Oh, these are just people on the street in Mexico City talking. Wow, okay.
It's coming 2 seats from behind me to the left.
Stop talking.
And the way the camera always does its slow pan really added to the realism of that sound design, because you'd hear people's voices slowly coming up behind you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So real quick, I thought I think one of the best scenes in the movie was when the riot broke out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That scene was so good in that they're kind of you could kind of feel that something was going to happen with the protesting. And, she's just kind of going about her business trying to buy clothes. And then you hear a murmuring outside, and the camera brings you across the room and shows this huge brawl that's happening. And the way they do it, you can't tell even really what's happening at first.
Hundreds of people.
Yeah, hundreds.
Is any of that CGI? Or is that all just
I would imagine those were all extras.
I think those are all people. I mean, they showed all the people earlier, and that's the thing. It's it's
so impressive.
It's the guy who knocked her up, and you see them training earlier, those hundreds of people, and then you're it was I lost my breath.
Everything kind of starts clicking together.
Yeah, oh, that's what they're training for. Oh my gosh. And it's brutal. It's so violent. Just extremely well done.
I mean, I definitely feel like that's the shot that that's technically the most complex shot of the whole movie, and all the moving pieces that happen. I was blown away by that shot more than any.
The final shot of the movie, maybe it wasn't the final shot, but there's a shot at the end too where, I mean, I think we could work our way to this part, but when she goes down into the water, that shot too is I'm pretty sure they built a rig that would bring the camera into the ocean, and
they probably had a big crane that they pushed. They built a giant platform all the way up the beach and down into the probably, I don't know, 30, 50 feet into the water.
While waves are crashing into them, and also the sun is setting too. The timing of that is I don't know how someone could pull that off. I don't know. Alfonso Cuarón is a master. He is just straight up a master. So
one of the more, I'm doing air quotes, simple shots that's still a masterpiece that always stuck in my head was just the one in the family holiday in the woods. Mm-hmm. And it starts so quiet with the boy in the astronaut outfit, and then the dogs come and everyone runs through the woods, all the children, and it ends showing the whole party and the people shooting guns over the lake.
Oh yeah.
That shot really stuck in my head as well.
So, basically, the big spoiler of this movie is that the main character gets pregnant pretty early on. After that scene in the department store, she goes into labor. Her water breaks, and the baby's comes out stillborn. So the baby dies, and it's a very, very intense scene. And so, I mean, I'm speaking from. This is coming from my opinion, my experiences, and I'm sure Derek can attest to this too, like, going through labor with our wives earlier this year, it was incredibly intense. Like, that was by far the most intense thing I've ever gone through. And I mean, I wasn't even doing the work, I was just there supporting her. But like, so the whole time I'm watching this, I'm like, kind of almost reliving that experience because the movie was so real. And so the movie is real, and I'm having these flashbacks of what it's like for me. And it was so tense. And then the baby comes out, stillborn. It was like the worst case scenario. It was like, that was the biggest fear, a father could have, or, a parent could have. And it was like, it was so hard to watch. Like, it was like seeing it come out that way. It was like, it was the worst feeling I've ever had in a movie. Like, by far, it was so terrible. And, I watched it, but like, I wanted to leave. If I hadn't gone to the Cinerama, if I wasn't there with a group of friends, like, I would have probably gone up and walked out. If I was watching it at home, I would have turned it off easily. Like, I would have turned it off. I was like, fuck you, movie. I don't know if you can come back from that. Like, I don't know if you can come back from that, because that was so fucking hard to watch. And even talking about it right now, I'm borderline getting emotional. Like, it was fucking tough. And, Phil was there too with us, and, the movie got over and he was like, what the fuck? And I was like, yeah, dude, like, I don't know about that movie. And he was like, thanks for saying that, 'cause I thought it was just me. And I'm like, no, man, like, fucking, that was fucking crazy. Like, it was too much for me. Like, it was.
Well, I was sitting right next to Phil. I know he pulled his hood over his head during that scene. And I know I mimic the same feelings you have. Like, I didn't watch that scene. I knew exactly, like, once I pretty much was reading the subtitles, and I did not want to look. I don't want that imagery in my head, honestly. Like, I just don't want to see it ever. And so it's just not something even in the respect of film, I think it's cool when filmmakers do things that are bold and stuff, but I personally don't ever want that imagery in my head. I don't need to see it. I don't ever want to see it. I don't want that to, like, come up in my dreams. I want to stay away from it. So I literally didn't watch what was happening on screen. I was just reading the subtitles during that scene. Because I was kind of the same way. Like, I didn't want to get up and walk out, but it's too much for me. Like, I literally couldn't handle it.
Yeah. So that hurts the movie for me.
It's hard for me to defend what I thought against your guys' emotions and your, like, personal
I don't think we have to.
feelings.
Yeah, it's not like an argument, it's not a defense or anything,
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, there's nothing really to say to that. But it is strange to me, like watching the intro to, like, Saving Private Ryan and being mad at it. Being mad at the movie for it to be too, like, real in showing, like, the violence of World War II, or being too real in showing the horror of a stillbirth.
See, that's my thing, is I don't think it's the movies. That's what's tough. Like, I think I appreciate when filmmakers do things like that are bold. I bet there are, like, World War II vets that didn't want to relive, like, the storming of the beach,
right, Right.
And so, like, I think it's just, I don't think it doesn't make the movie worse as what he wanted to make. I think he was still firing on all cylinders, I'm sure, during that scene. But it does make our reception of it worse. Like, it definitely ruined my experience of the movie. So there's no way around that. I had less fun because of what he did. I didn't like it as much because of what he did.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's a fair comparison to, Saving Private Ryan, because, like, a war film, you know what you're getting yourself into. You know that it's going to be violent, and it's almost like, out of respect, to the people in the war, it should be realistic. And I just don't know, like, part of me is, like, kind of, what Sean was saying earlier, like, I kind of don't know what I kind of don't know what the point of the movie was a little bit. Like it's like it's a movie about the maid and what she goes through, but like I don't know if it comes back and delivers like, a worthwhile, like, if it's going to show us this thing that's so emotional, like, I don't know if it comes back all the way of, oh yeah, that was worth it, and I mean, I think we could go on talking about the ending further. She goes on that trip with the family, and she's obviously upset, and the kids they go out to the beach, and two of the kids get caught by the ocean and start drowning, and she grabs them and saves them, and obviously everyone's like super happy that she saves their lives, that she, like, everyone's like, you saved us, like, oh, we love you, and she's emotional, they're emotional, everyone's like, it's a huge moment. But then they go back to the house, the vacation's over and they go back to the house, she's still their maid, she's still like, is just doing laundry. And she, like, I know the movie tries to, I think it successfully, like, shows that she feels more part of the family. She, I think, like, they use symbolism really well. The first shot of the movie is her cleaning up dog shit in the garage, and it shows the reflection of the ground of a puddle of water and an airplane going overhead. And then the final shot is her walking up onto the roof. And I think it's very purposeful, showing that in the beginning, she's like, she's on the ground, she's not feeling great, she's cleaning up dog shit. And at the end, she's like high, she's going up, she feels more part of the family, she's elevated. But she still is doing laundry, she still is just like a maid in their house. And
yeah, like that definitely, for me, I find that so interesting. Like, and it to me, it's almost like knowing that it's, I think that Alfonso Cuarón said it's 90% based on his memories of this woman growing up. And I think maybe it's like, him growing up with this woman who in a lot of ways he saw as a mother, or it was a very motherly relationship that he had with her. And then growing up, kind of gaining a better understanding of that relationship in the context of his society and in the context of his family, and her being an employee, and really being able to understand what she went through in her life, or having a better, more mature understanding of what she went through in her life. And I don't know if he necessarily is trying to give any answers, or if he's trying to make a very specific point about that relationship, but I think that's like the portrayal of that relationship is just so interesting to me in this movie. Mm-hmm. And I kind of want to go back to that scene, the hospital scene, to kind of give my perspective, or more of a normal perspective, or the perspective of someone who didn't just in the last few months go through a childbirth of their first child. That for me was the best scene and the best shot of the film. I think that the restraint of that shot showed so much maturity for him. Like, he's known for his big, epic, sprawling, one take shots in his movies. And for this movie to be also, to be a one shot, one take, it shows the isolation of her character, like coming into the emergency room, and for it to just hold on her in a profile while these doctors are running around her, and just stuck on that dynamic between her and her baby, as you realize that the baby isn't coming back, and how that plays into kind of the dynamic of the movie, like her being alone. This isn't her family. It's not, she's an employee of these people who happen to love her, and she loves them, and the kids love her in a very motherly way. but it's just such a fascinating dynamic that the movie portrays, and I think I could talk about that for more time than we have here.
Yeah.
That's definitely the most fascinating part of the movie.
For me, who hasn't like gone through anything like that, I appreciate the movie letting me just sit there and feel at least a sliver of that same emotion, and to be able to give me empathy for that situation in a way I've never seen or felt before was really special.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that's what movies are all about too.
I'd like to talk about kind of the pivotal line in the movie at the end, when she mentions she didn't want to have the baby. I don't know if you guys mind me having a quick stab at it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But I feel like that was kind of there, and it kind of took me by surprise, and it's in a very strange, like kind of almost staged moment of the film. But like what it means to her character to me kind of told me that even though it's kind of like a despicable thing that normally you wouldn't want someone to say or wouldn't want to hear someone say, but to me it kind of almost meant it gave that character even more strength. The fact that even though she felt the same way that her partner did, who completely abandoned her and her child, she in no way was going to be willing to do that. And she was strong enough to, even though she did not want the baby, that she knew what she needed to do and she knew the responsibility that she had. And so I kind of felt like that, even though it's a mixed thing to hear someone say out loud, that it kind of reflects even more, that reveal makes her even more strong of a person.
I completely agree with that.
yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, I don't know. I think there's a lot of different implications to that final line. What? No, I mean, I think I had a different take on that, but like, I think a lot of this movie is like, there's a lot of different, he used symbolism a lot with his shots. And I feel like with that last line, there's a lot of different ways to interpret that.
I'd be interested in hearing your way, unless you want to move along.
I kind of thought that she was, I don't fully believe that she didn't want the baby. I think that was like maybe her innermost like bad thought, like to herself that she had maybe. I just can't fully believe that, a lady who's carrying the baby for so long just would be like, I don't want this. I think like every woman wants the baby at some point. I think like maybe that was in her head because she was worried about her job and she got knocked out by this lunatic. But I think her expressing that was like, at the end of the movie, that was her like releasing her bad thought. It was like she had it in her mind and she felt guilty about it. And that was her like letting go of that bad thought and kind of releasing her from some of the guilt that she had. But I don't necessarily fully believe that she straight up didn't want it. I think that was just maybe a thought that she had.
I mean, I think it's definitely complex. I think like, especially the emotion in the scene, in that hospital scene, like the emotion that we saw from her, obviously there was something there. There was definitely,
it wasn't
a love
reluctance, but
yeah, there was a reluctance. There was a love for the child that she thought she was carrying, or that she was carrying for so long. And maybe even Brennan, your take and Brennan's take aren't all that different, or are mutually exclusive.
Right.
There was one other scene midway through the movie which I didn't understand it the first time through, and Chris, who I saw it with, brought up to me the scene later, which was the fire sequence. He told me that what he saw when people were putting out the fire, that the homeowners, the people partying, still had their like drinks in their hand. That totally went over my head, but now I'm like seeing these little images, and I'd like to see that scene again. But yeah, all the, I guess, maids and cooks and all the staff of the house were like the ones trying to save the fire, and all the adults were just like drunk and partying and not giving a shit.
They were literally putting fires out while the partiers are partying.
Yeah. So I don't know if you guys caught that in the moment, but yeah.
Yeah, no, that definitely makes sense. I mean, that I caught that several times throughout the movie where it was where that kind of classism was showing through. But yeah, and that makes a whole lot of sense why that guy was singing a German, I don't know, whatever that was, some kind of German
like
song, like
a glass in his hand of liquor.
Yeah, definitely.
It just sucks because this movie is so good, but I straight up don't know how to recommend this to anyone. Like I don't know how to tell anyone to watch this movie. You know, like
I don't know that I can. Like I don't know who I could recommend it to that wouldn't come out of it being like, why the fuck did you tell me to go watch that movie?
Right. So I mean that's.
But at the same time, I think it's incredibly well made, and it's a big moment for his career too. I think like I'm really excited to see what he does next.
Yeah. But like I don't know, it's like I don't know, it could win Best Picture, but I don't know if people are gonna watch it. It's like
wait. So my last question: can this get? So the Golden Globe's nominated for Best Foreign Film. So it's not a Best Picture contender.
It can be, yeah. It definitely can be.
For the Oscars, it will be
because it was released in American theaters. Is that the?
Yeah, something like that.
Any movie can be. As long as it's released once in America.
I think Oscars do have some sort of caveat that they need to be released in theaters, which is partly why Netflix is really pushing it. But all right, so I think we need to wrap this episode up, though, guys. It's kind of been a long one. Anyway, where can we find you guys online?
You can find me on Letterboxd at Chicken Tech.
You can find me at Letterboxd at Beb.
Letterboxd Bulbinator.
Cool, and I'm on at Mothman23. Thanks for listening, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.